And we are back as per usual on a Saturday night with you for LG Hockey Hotline. We are coming at you this week after week 3 of season 5, and the division we're going to talk about is kind of a precursor to what's going on throughout the whole league. A lot of movement up and down in the standings of each of the divisions across both conferences, and plenty to talk about as usual here. We got the power rankings and all sorts of stuff to talk about, as we always do. Never run out of things to talk about here. So I guess we'll get right into it. Moran, first things first, happy 21st birthday. What's going on?
I can finally drink now. You believe that shit? Wow. I'm tired of using that fake ID. But hey, here we are. Week 3's in the books, and a lot of movement with league leaders and stats, a lot of movement in the standings, a lot of movement with teams and players. So as you said, we got a lot to talk about, a lot to get to here, as we're going to be covering yet another division this week in depth. We're going to kind of go through team by team and tell you what we see and what we think that we see, and kind of break it all down for you here tonight as we're live on June the 17th.
Yep. Also, I don't remember if I mentioned it or not, but May 1st, so a month and a half ago, was 1 year that we've been doing the podcast. I think I might have mentioned it, but I don't know. The draft show was kind of a clusterfuck, and I wasn't there for 99% of it, and apparently you weren't there with Chief for 30% of it. But we have been doing this for a little over a year now, and don't think we've gotten any better. So let's continue to do what we've been doing. And happy birthday. So any house cleaning stuff we need to get to? I don't really think there was anything this week. I haven't really heard anything big being talked about other than McGregor versus Mayweather and stuff like that that's going on. The usual lazy pedestrian comedy post in the shout box once in a while, and I don't know, the usual shit going on, I guess.
Yeah, there was a important reminder, thread sent out by LG McDonald just I believe it was earlier today that he sent it out. If you haven't had a chance to read that yet, owners, make sure you go and read it. Just a few reminders on some updates throughout the league, some things that you got to refresh your memory on, or just refresh yourself on, or learn. So all owners, I don't know if it went out to GMs or not, but pass that on to your GMs if it didn't. There's some pretty good stuff in there about the upcoming American holiday of July 4th. There's some important news in there that you need to pass on to your teams as well as your managers.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking at it right now. There's definitely, I don't know. Does he sit there and type these out, or does he have copy and paste? Because I can't imagine what kind of time goes into trying to type all this out and add screenshots. It's just basic stuff, though. Definitely give it a look. Just more really for a couple of things that I can see here, just communication-wise. It's basically just reminding to have communication, especially between the NHL and AHL management. So keep that up, basically. But, so this week we're going to cover what has generally been known as the tightest division in LG over the last 3 seasons, and that is, of course, the Western Central. We have had the President's Trophy won the last 2 seasons out of this division, Chicago winning it once, and then winning the Cup, and then Dallas, of course, winning the President's Trophy last year, to fall just a bit short, not make it to the Cup. But this division is generally separated by 2, 3, 4 games from Team 1 to Team 7. And no different again here. Just as an example, the Winnipeg Jets were in first place last week, and I think there was 5 points that were between first place and seventh place. They went on a 6-game losing streak to end the week and end up at the bottom of the division after 1 week, but still only 7 points back of first place behind Chicago. So this division is one of the crazier divisions on the PlayStation side, and has continued to be season over season for the last 3, 100%. So I guess let's get right into it here and talk about the Winnipeg Jets. They are sitting at 26 points right now, which is last place in the Western Conference, but the entire conference is separated by 12 points for 14 teams. They, like I said, lost the last 6 games of this week, and are still sitting just under 500 at 11, 12, and 4. Their goal differential is something that is jumping out at me. They're sitting at 67 goals for and 92 goals against. That's painful to see when you see like Chicago sitting there with almost the exact opposite, 93 for and 62 against. But they're still right there. This is a division that doesn't really seem to matter what happens throughout the season. It seems like all 7 teams are in it until the bitter end.
It really does. This division has just been nasty the last 3 years, and you see a lot of guys who own teams in this division that are basically just ripping their hair out being in this division. They tried to even, quote unquote, balance this division out by moving the previous Dallas roster from season 3 over to Boston, and Boston's roster coming over to Dallas, but it didn't really do anything, as this division is still just as tight gets. But Winnipeg was kind of a surprise team for me coming out of the gates. Being in first place after the second week, I was kind of taken aback by it. I was like, wow, they're getting it done. But as you can see, one little stumble in this division and you can fall all the way down to the bottom, as Winnipeg has done. Now I have confidence in the fact that this team will come back up, because as this division is so close, and they get to go outside and play outside their division. It seems like, when they come inside and play their division foes, as for last week anyway, they had a little bit of trouble with that, but who doesn't when they play the Western Central? That's a beast of a division. Every team in that division is extremely good, and there's some teams in that division right now that are kind of underachieving a little bit. The Dallases of the world, the Colorados of the world. Those are teams that have great rosters, but they're kind of underperforming as to where they've been in the past. I mean, Dallas winning the President's Trophy last year. Colorado's turned out to be a very solid team. Just made a huge trade with Tampa. So when it comes to Winnipeg, they've got some work ahead of them, but they've got a solid roster. They have several previous owners on this roster. They have Niner Rice, or AKA Sedin Power, who's 5-2-2 on the season for them. He's a previous owner. They have Untouchable, who's 4-3-2 on the season, who's a previous owner. So they have a lot of brain power on this team as far as guys who can help with the roster or help get games together or whatever, do stats, which is huge. That's something huge to have, and that's a big asset to have in your team, as well as the leadership that those guys bring. So I see a lot of leaders on this team, and that's something good to have as well. So this team's definitely not going to go away anytime soon. I don't expect them to lose 6 games in a row this week by any stretch of the imagination. So I would expect them to have a little bit of a turnaround week here and start to climb back up and get right back into the conversation in this division. They've got very good talent across the boards. Smitheroo is a very good, solid left wing. plays a great 200-foot game. And not to mention the owner, Dead Soul, who's a very good player. His GM, he went with Hypey this season. Hypey has been a perennial top center in this league since day one. So they've definitely got the firepower over here to make a good run this week and get themselves right back to where they need to be.
Yeah, and Hypey, of course, was just made GM, I believe, last week. He's 5-1-2 on the season with 16 points. So he's playing very well, and hopefully he can help this team get right back on track next week. They have Gentry, who's 4-0-2 with 14 points on the season. They've got some guys on here. Primary Flash, who came over from Xbox, is 5-2-1, playing left D for them. He's at 6 points on the season. Niner, of course, you said. The guys on this team, they do have guys that have the ability to get it done. They have a draft pick in Brian Adores Liz, who's got 16 points on the season, but is just 3-5-1. You're going to play some tough division opponents, and looks like they ran up against some tough games last week in their division. It'll be nice for them not to have to face those teams this week, for the most part anyway, as they're going up against the Eastern Atlantic Division. But after having a week where you were 1-8, your job here is at very minimum you have to go above 500 this week. You got to be 5-4, 4-3-2 or something of that nature. You got to be above 500 picking up points if you want to stay in this race, because your Blackhawks, Wild, Blues, Predators, Avalanche, Stars, all those teams, all those 6 teams ahead of you are going to be doing just that. That's why this division remains so close season over season, week over week during those seasons. And Winnipeg has to climb back up out of the hole that they dug last week and not let it get any deeper, because at this point, having a 1-8 week took them from first place to last place in the division, but they're still there. They're only 7 points back of first place in the division. They're just going to need to have a big week here to get them right back in the mix and give them a little bit of confidence heading back into another division week the following week. So we'll see if Winnipeg's able to dig out of that hole that they put themselves in last week. And, with the experience that they have on that roster, I wouldn't be completely surprised to see that happen. But it's tough. You lose 6 in a row and some guys start to lose confidence, and, you got to keep guys engaged and make them care. So coming out of the gates with a couple of wins starting tomorrow night is going to be huge for this team.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's definitely, they're going to have to, it's short-term memory in this game, as we all know. You can't dwell on the past. You got to keep pushing forward, and this is a team that I definitely think can do that with the leadership that they have.
Yep. Well, moving on, let's get to these Dallas Stars, who also made a very big trade. They traded Young Jock to the New York Islanders for PTP, picking up a center that I can only assume is going to be centering up BBK and Class Act. Chief sitting right now with the Stars at 83 goals for and 81 goals against. I think is probably looking to try and rekindle some of that offensive firepower that they had last season as they led the league in goals for as a team. They scored the most goals in the entire league as a team. So moving out one of the leagues, I think Young Jock finished second, maybe third in the Norris Trophy voting last season. Moving him out for PTP, who just made the switch back to center. I think what he's doing is he's thinking that his decor is solid enough, and he wants to go get a guy that can help them offensively put up more points. That's what I personally see out of that trade and why you would make that deal.
Let's also not forget that PTP was a defenseman for the last 2 seasons. So that's going to get a guy who's going to be playing center, who's going to be playing defense as well. So, that's a great pickup for me. You got to give a little bit to get a little, and they definitely gave a lot, but they definitely received a lot in return.
Yeah, but they still have D Perrins and Deji D, who's both on D. Deji's having a little bit of a down season compared to last season, but we all know what he can do on defense for them. They have Reactions, who has been solid for Chief for the last season and a half. And then, of course, not only do you have BBK and Class Act with PTP, but you also have Easton's, which you don't want to forget about. Chief's having a really good season. He's 6-2-1 right now with 10 points on the season, so he's just over a point a game. And then, of course, they have Ghost MK, Ebony Fetish, and Jay Snipes, who Jay Snipes is having an outstanding season for them. Tied for their, let me check again real quick just to be sure, but I believe he's tied. Yes, he is. Tied for for the team lead in points with Easton's, both sitting at 23 points. He's got a 7-2 record, 23 points, 5 goals, 18 assists. And Easton's is 6-3 with 23 points. He's got 15 goals and 8 assists. So, if they can get Class Act, who's 4-5 on the season with 15 points, and BBK 6-3 with 19 points on the season, if they can get those guys hot with PTP, which is what I'm assuming again is going to be the mix. It may not be, but a guy like that can help spark those guys, and we all know how good Class Act can be. And BBK last year in his rookie season proved that he is one of the top wingers. So much so that Jam actually added him to their starting Pro Series lineup. If you're good enough to break into Jam's starting Pro Series lineup, then you're not a bad player at all. So I expect Dallas to probably get better after that trade this week and go out and probably put up a lot of points in the form of goals on the board.
Yeah, I would expect the same. You get a guy like PTP in there, who has familiarity with Desi. He has familiarity with Class Act. They some of these guys know each other, and those are big time players that know each other. The one that just blows me away here is Class Act being 4-5. We all know what kind of player he is. So, don't expect that to last. He's going to come back up, and why he's probably going to end up finishing the season, 20-5. So that's definitely something that will not last. And like I said, this is a team that I think right now, with the talent that they have, is currently underachieving. And when this team gets going, look the hell out, because they're going to catapult right up to the top of this division. They're going to be competing with the Blackhawks and the Blues. I definitely think this team has room to grow, and that big trade that they just made could be something that sparks the fire for this team. And one thing I do want to say about this team is Chief, he gets a lot of shit around this league, but I'm going to tell you right now, this guy is a good owner. He is a great owner in this league. His team is always not just competitive; they're always just straight up good. And he catches a lot of flack from a lot of people in this league. And he gained my respect even more the other night when we played against his team, and all the crap that went down in that game with disconnects and late arrivals. And I mean, it was just a joke show. And, he completely just earned a hell of a lot more respect from me. I respect the hell out of Chief and the way he builds a team and the way he goes about his business. So, with this team, they're going to be, catching fire come this week. So anybody who plays Dallas this week, be aware, because they're going to be coming at you from all directions, and they're going to be putting those pucks in the net. I can promise you that. So this team's definitely got everything it needs to put a run together here. I mean, looking over this roster, I mean, you see great player after great player, and then you see superstar after superstar. So, this team's definitely not going to stay where they're at. Look for them to move, and move rather quickly coming up this week. They're going out and they're playing against the Atlantic this week, where they're playing, so I definitely would look for them to definitely build some points this week. Their entire division's playing the Atlantic. That's not to say that the Atlantic's weak. They just don't have to play each other. And for this division, that's a relief. When you don't got to play teams like St. Louis, Minnesota, Chicago on a daily basis, that's a big weight off your shoulders. And when they go and play other teams, you can definitely tell that they've been playing against their division the previous week. So I would definitely look for this team to come out this week firing on all cylinders, especially after that big trade.
Yeah, the only problem Dallas really has is that teams know, looking at that roster from top to bottom, all three lines, that you're not going to get a night off against Dallas ever because of the way Chief built the roster. So chances are they're going to see a lot of first lines because of that. So that'll make it a little more difficult for them as they go. But they definitely have the talent that can beat everybody's first line with whatever line they put out there. So, it may be a little more difficult depending on what matchups they get because their roster is so deep. And that could be a reason why they're sitting where they're at right now, but they're only 5 points back of the lead in the division. Last season, I think they were in fourth place with 3 weeks to go when they went on a run to not just take over the division, but ended up winning the President's Trophy. So when this team is finally firing on all cylinders, I expect them to be up there with the top 3 or 4 teams in this league, possibly contending for that President's Trophy again. So, look out for Dallas, really. And they're 4-2-2 in 1-goal games, 7-6 at home, 6-6-2 on the road. The surprising thing really is just that 4-5-1 in their last 10 games. But they make that big deal to bring in PTP, and we'll see what happens if they're able to spark Class Act back into the usual great form that he has. Maybe he's got a little bit of adjustment playing with different centers because he's played so many games with Piper, whether it be with Jam or the last several seasons in Chicago. But he's a good enough player where it shouldn't take him that long to adjust, and I think he'll be just fine. Let's go ahead and move on to the team that's in the 5th place position in this division, and that is the Colorado Avalanche. They are tied with Dallas with the exact same record. Both teams 13-12-2, sitting at 28 points on the season. Colorado did end their week on a win, and they are 3-6-1 in their last 10 games, 9-5 at home, 4-7-2 on the road, 6-7-2 in 1-goal games. And being that they got 7 losses in 1-goal games, let's say you just turn 3 of those around, and now you're 7-4-2. Turning those 3 around puts them at 34 points and in first place in the division in those 1-goal games. So Colorado's right there. They just made, as you said a little bit ago, they just made an enormous trade with Tampa. Let's go ahead and I'm going to pull that trade up real quick, as a matter of fact. So they just made a trade. They traded John Sheldon, as I'm waiting for this to open up. John Sheldon, Hazy Hype. Here it is. So let me go make sure. Okay, so what happened basically, the original deal was full 90, Novak for Prez, Base Camper, Belaya, and McInnes, so 5 players, going to Colorado for Hazy Hype, Litz McLovin, J Mars, Trap MC, and John Sheldon. They did decide after that deal was done to reverse part of the deal with each other, and Tampa sent McLovin back to Colorado, receiving full 90 back. So basically the deal was Novak, Base Camper, Belaya, and McInnes for Hazy Hype, J Mars, Trap, and John Sheldon. Regardless, that's an enormous trade. I didn't look into the full reason why that particular part of the deal was reversed, but there's some big contracts going back and forth here. it could have been just strictly cap related why that was reversed. But big names going both directions here. And Chicago, I guess, after going 3-6-1 in their last 10 games, just did I say Chicago?
Yeah.
Colorado going 3-6-1 in their last 10 games. Must just be looking to shake it up a little bit, as we know Beefy likes to do, and trying to spark his team to get right back into the mix here, as they're not that far out. So, we'll see how that move in particular affects the play of this team and how well those guys fit in on this roster. Novak is a guy who had an outstanding season last season for New Jersey. And, I think that McLovin is a guy that I was kind of surprised to originally see in this deal. He's got 26 points on the season. He's 5-3-1. He's having a really good season. And of course they have Bone Crush as the GM there now. Colorado's got some players on their team. And, I think that this deal must just literally be a product of being part of the Western Central and doing anything you can to try to gain some sort of advantage in this division, which is next to impossible to do.
Well, that's the truth right there. As we've talked about at length and at nauseum here, this division is just stacked all the way across. Every team's good. There ain't a team in this division that's even close to being a pushover. And Colorado definitely is not one of those teams. Going out and making that big trade here, which is a large trade, 5 for 5, that's crazy to me.
4 for 4.
Right. But initially it was 5 for 5.
Mm-hmm.
But that's crazy. That's a lot of players, and it's not like they're bottom liners. These guys are top line players on both sides, going both ways. So we'll see if that kind of sparks Colorado here. I've at first, I've always had respect for counterattack with what he did in the AHL. He ran his team like a machine down there. They were constantly in the finals. And then when he came up to the NHL, he was constantly making trades and stuff. And it was kind of like, whoa, but there's a method to what he does. And, it's really starting to show now that he's just a guy who likes to tinker with his team, and he does so, but his team is always good. They're always good. He always knows the right buttons to push with his guys and to get guys in there that he knows are going to play a certain way. Case in point is bringing a guy like Vikes in. Vikes is a guy who's been with counterattack seasons, in the AHL. I think he may have had a stint with him up here in the NHL before this most recent one, but bringing a guy like Vikes in to play defense, who's a solid defender. He's 7-2 on the season. He's got 9 points. He's a +10. Bringing in a guy like that onto your back end is a great move, especially for a team with as much offensive firepower as Colorado has. So, this team's definitely got some star-studded players on it. You talked about them. You got Bone Crusher. You got Kilbrick Extreme. You got McLovin, who I think is having a great breakout season here. We've all known McLovin's been a good player, for seasons now, but I think he's actually stepping his game up this season to really go out there and prove to people that he is a top player in this league. And to have a guy like that on your team, it does nothing but bolster your lineup. So having guys like that, adding a Novak for Perez, bringing up one of their draft picks who kind of spent a little bit of time down in the AHL in general, 420, who's a guy that I've seen play quite a bit recently, and a guy that I absolutely love to watch play. I think he's an outstanding player. McInnes, the list goes on and on and on with this team. So I would definitely look for these guys to start to make a push here after this move. We'll see if there's any other moves on the horizon, as they're currently sitting with, I believe, 3, 6, 9 draft picks coming up in the draft. So that right there, is an 8. So that
Yep.
right there proves to you that counterattack is always wheeling and dealing. He's always talking to people. He's talking to owners. He's getting stuff done. And now he not only has this roster, but he also has all of those draft picks to help sweeten the deal on some of these deals that he makes as well, which is really good ammunition to have. That's currency.
Yeah.
That's like having money in the NHL in the form of draft picks.
Yeah, and I think what surprises me most of all about those draft picks is that he still owns his own first-round pick. That's something that he's traded the last couple of seasons. But he's got his first rounder, and then he's got, basically half the league's second-round picks here. He's got 6 second-round picks, and then LA's third. And, I think he went out and made Phenomenal one his GM for this season. I don't know what happened there, but Phenomenal was removed from the league. And what he was actually able to do, you lose one of the best centers in the league like that, but he gets to take Bone Crusher's $8.5 million contract and move that to GM, which takes $8.5 million off his cap and allows him to make a big deal like this. He's trying to get his team set, probably moving guys around after that happened, trying to get the right mix again. But I mean, as much as he trades and as much shit as you can give him for making a ton of trades, he's always right there. And over the last 3 seasons, he missed the playoffs in his first season, and then made them last season. He's progressively gotten better in the NHL as an owner. And his roster has definitely gotten better each season as a result. So we'll see how that trade affects them, especially this week as they go to play the Eastern Conference. And we'll see if they can have a big week to probably going to end up just having to have a big week to keep pace, because that's just what this league does, or this division does. You can go out and go 7-2 in a week and
not gain any ground.
End up being in the same position you started the weekend, and you're feeling really good about the fact that you went 7-2, 8-1, and you go look at the standings and you haven't made up any ground, and everybody's still sitting right where they were, and you're like, damn, you have to go undefeated just to gain a point in this division. So, I expect more of the same there, but he did make a big leap of faith here, trading away a guy, especially in Hazy Hype, who was vital to his team's success for Hartford when he was in the AHL. Didn't have him the last couple of seasons. He went out and got him in RFA this season, and was kind of surprised to see him in the deal, because that's been a guy that once he's on counterattack's team has usually been a big part of it. But we'll see how it affects this team moving forward. I expect them to be there and be a part of this, especially with guys like Bone Crusher and McLovin on the roster, and then adding guys like Novak and McInnes. So
yeah, let's also not forget, with what you had mentioned, the first season in the NHL, they didn't make it. Then the second season, they make it to the playoffs. This is their season to go and make a deep run and make a push for the cup, I think. And, let's not forget, counterattack knows what it's like to win championships. He won the first season's Calder Cup with his team down there in Hartford, and then took them right back to the Calder Cup finals again and fell just a game short in Game 7. So he almost won back-to-back cups down there, and then he comes up here. So he's got that championship pedigree, and he's got guys on his team that were on those teams. So, he's got guys he's familiar with, and he's got a well-rounded team here pushing forward.
Yes, he does. So moving on to the 4th place team in this division, the Nashville Predators. They're sitting at 29 points, just 1 point up on the Stars and the Avalanche. They ended their week on a 3-game losing streak, which hurts, as they're only 4 points out of the division lead. They're sitting at 13, 11, and 3, and they are almost dead even on their goal differential. They're at 88 goals for, 89 goals against, so they're just a -1. This is a team that missed out on the playoffs last season and looks to get back there this season. And, so far, right in the mix in the top half of this extremely tough division. new owner this season in Breezy. His GM is Headshot. These guys put together a very solid team. They picked up a guy in Easy Dangles. They've got, of course, Daddy Marino, who might be on he's definitely on one of the top 3 or 4 contracts in the entire league, as he's been re-signed season over season, and I believe is sitting at like $1.75 million after he just got off of he might not even be that high. He might be $1.5 million. He was on a 3-season deal and then has been re-signed twice, I believe. He's a very good right defenseman and at an extremely friendly price.
At $1 million.
$1 million. So even less than I thought, and then they went out and got a guy in Sweet Lou who's 7-1-1 on the season with 30 points. He's got 8 goals and 22 assists. They've got Snoop 651 on lefty, along with Poland's finest. A newer guy in Marner 93. They've got Queso Paguni, who was one of their draft picks, and then last season's owner of Philly and Checkmate on this roster. This is another team like Winnipeg that has several former owners on it, and Easy Dangles, Checkmate. And then, of course, they brought back H. Spartan G, who was a draft pick last season by Pittsburgh and was traded to Nashville and became an AGM and continues to be an AGM for them, helping them build this team. And, I think that this team is, put together pretty nicely top to bottom. They've got their offensive firepower and guys like Sweet Lou and Chippy 19. And then you've got your defensive guys and Daddy Marino, Poland's finest. Vince Power on right wing is a guy that they drafted as well this season. And then, of course, you have Headshot at center, Spartan and net. It's a very solid team, and like we said, just in an extremely tough division.
Yeah, this is another one of those teams that I look at and I see the firepower that they have, literally. I mean, the players that they have on this team, like you had mentioned, and I go straight to a guy like Sweet Lou, who I think is one of the best centers in this league. He's a 200-foot player. He is outstanding. He is if he's not an owner right now, he's owned teams. I mean, multiple teams on the Xbox side, who comes over and he's 7-1-1 on the season with 30 points. And you get that out of your 200-foot center. That's the driving force for this team. So, and looking across this team and seeing the talent on this team, I think they can do better, to be blunt with you. I think this team's going to do better. I think they're going to be pushing Chicago all season. They're going to be right up there, pushing Chicago, pushing St. Louis, pushing the Wild, and knocking on the door, and they're not going to go away anytime soon. They've got talent from top to bottom. I think Headshot is one of the best centers in this league. Spartan has proven to be a very good goaltender. Calm Blue Ice is a player who's just kind of quietly been good in all the seasons in LG here since season 3, I believe. So like you said, Daddy Marino, this team's definitely stacked, if you ask me. They've got a lot of good players. Chippy, Checkmate, I mean, the list goes on and on and on for this team. So I would definitely expect them, to maybe make a move here or there. You never know, but they don't need to do much because this team's stacked. So I would definitely look for them. Snoop's finally gotten out there and having himself a very consistent season this season. Going 5-2-2 so far. So, Poland's finest is another one of those defenders that you were talking about. No chance is their second goaltender. So this team's definitely got what it takes. I would expect them maybe to make a couple of minor moves here or there. I don't see them making any big moves. But if I had to guess, I'd say they'd probably make a few here and there, just to kind of get, minor details hashed out that they may be working on. So, but overall, I like the Nashville Predators roster. And I mean, and it may sound redundant, people may be out there sitting there saying, oh God, they like every team in the Central. And you know what? I do. I like all of these teams. I think every team in the Central is a good team and can be pushing for a playoff spot. So I would definitely look for, a lot of these teams to be, coming right down to the wire when all is said and done.
Yeah, I think Nashville, you can expect to make a deal or two. I don't think it's because they have to talent-wise. I think if they make a deal, it's purely going to be because they're trying to make a fit on a specific line. They're a team that will make a deal or two to try and bolster this roster to get the chemistry mix that they like. But if they were stuck and weren't able to make any deals, I think they'd be just fine. I think Nashville is a team that is going to be battling here along with them. None of these teams are going to go away. But Nashville, I expect to be battling, no lower than they are right now. They will be in the top 4 of this division for throughout the season. I think that the way that they're built right now is deep from forward to defense to goaltending, that they're built very well to compete in this Western Central Division, and I expect them to continue to do so the rest of the way. So now let's get into our top 3 teams in this division. The third place team belonging to new St. Louis Blues owner Barris, who is sick. And he's got 31 points with the Blues this season, sitting in third place, 14-10-3 record. They ended the week on a 4-game win streak. They are 9-1-3 in 1-goal games. And if I take a quick glance over the league, I believe they're in the top 3 for 1-goal game records this season. And they are. There is one team. The Devils are 9-3-1 in 1-goal games, as the Blues are 9-1-3. So they've gotten more points than the Devils in their 1-goal games. And then the Columbus Blue Jackets are 12-1-2 in 1-goal games. So they're leading the way. The Blues are in second. And that'll go a long way. And this team is used to battling in close games. They right now are 6-4 in their last 10 games. 7-6-1 at home, 7-4-2 away. They are struggling a little bit in goals for to goals against at 57-4, which is a pretty low total, and then 76 goals against, which is best for third in their division for lowest goals against. I think the Blues are a team that season over season have been consistently battling here very good, also to the point where there have been a significant number of people who picked them to beat Chicago the last couple of seasons in the playoffs. Weren't able to do it, but we're in it all the way till the end. But the GM over here is Pacioretty 67, an extremely good right winger in this league. Their AGM, Bo Dangles, was a draft pick last season. I've been playing a ton of Rainbow Six with him. Elite party presence is what I have to say about Bo. He's a really good guy. And, playing defense for the Blues this season, going 8-0-1, has 0 regulation losses to this point. He's got 5 points on the season. He's a +9. Right now, holding down is their best defenseman on this team. They have the returning runner-up to the Hart Trophy and current Calder Trophy winning Penguins hockey, made a move over to right wing. He's 7-1-1 on the season. They made a trade to pick up Schneider. That happened last week. I think I have a little bit of info on Schneider and part of that deal. I don't know the whole story, so I'm not going to get into it. But I'm not sure if he is playing anymore or not. So they have a guy in Jay Falcon who was part of that big deal they made with Braden last week. They traded out, I think it was another 4-for-4 deal, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you want to pull that up real quick. They brought Crofto 40 back in net, who they signed to a 2-year deal at $500K and was right there. Should have gotten a nod in the top 3 in the Vezina conversation. I think he was 4th. But had an outstanding season, was consistently in the power rankings, has really found his own moving to goaltender from left wing, and become one of the top goalies in this league. And that, he's definitely in the top 5 or 10 goalies in this entire league now. Very good at goaltending. They've got HJ, who's also 7-0-2 on the season with no regulation losses. He's only got 12 points, but he's winning games and picking up points in the games he doesn't win. Joker 31 is 7-1-1 on the season. Not a lot of guys with a ton of points on this team, but a lot of guys with some outstanding records, and a lot of guys who, when they're losing, are losing in overtime, still picking up points for this team. Barris has put together a very solid roster, and I think that what he did with the Braden deal, based on what I've heard about availability and other things that have been going on in this league, was actually a very good deal for Barris to make. It was smart to make it, and he made it at the right time where he's able to help his team, and still has time to iron out a couple other details if he has to before we get to the trade deadline in just 4 weeks. So, or 3 weeks actually. So, Moran, what do you see with the St. Louis Blues this season?
Well, going to that trade that you were talking about, it was involved in J.C. Falcon, amazing, Schneider and Snipefest all going from Buffalo to St. Louis, and then coming back the other way was Braden, Busy 313, Balaki 96, and Mpelli. So that's another one of those big trades there, where there's 4 pieces going each way. That's a big time move. That's a lot of good players involved, and that's a lot of good players going both ways. So, for St. Louis, they give up, an outstanding defender in Braden. They give up a great big-time goal scorer in Busy, but they also get back solid 200-foot players and a goaltender who's just one season removed from winning the Vezina and the Hart in the same season. So, they pick up some big pieces there. Hopefully the news about Schneider is not true, because he is a top goaltender in this league. And, he has been for several seasons in a row now. He just continues to roll, as currently right now. I mean, he's sitting at 6-1-3. So, but this team's definitely, I think this team is more built to be a defensive team, which is weird when you see that, they've given up more goals than they've scored. But on the other hand, that's about right, because they have a lot of 200-foot players on this team, but they also have a lot of outstanding goal scorers on this team. Penguins hockey, I think, is one of the top players in this league, and it's not even close. He's definitely in the conversation with a lot of those guys. I think Barris has done a very good job with this team, and picking Pacioretty as, his GM. And like you said, Bo Dangle's going 8-0-1 so far on the season as a defender, +9 with 5 points. That tells you right there, he's got solid players on the back end of this team, himself being one of them. And I'm talking about Barris. Crofto has been a big time surprise for me, because I really like Crofto. He's a great friend, and we always used to play club. And, if we needed a goaltender, he'd step in and he would just dominate. And we'd all be like, what the hell, man? Why aren't you playing goalie too? Like, I mean, he's a great forward too. Don't get me wrong. We used to love having him on our teams. We did several seasons. But, it seems like he's really found a home between the pipes, and is doing an outstanding job of it. A guy like Joker, you see several people on this team that are, they have one loss, one, overtime loss, no losses, one overtime loss. So, and looking across this roster, I definitely think St. Louis is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this Central. And they're right about where they need to be. They're not jumping out to a huge lead over anybody, so they relax. They're still chasing some teams, and they're still fighting and clawing to get up to the top of this division, which is good for a team. If you get at the top, you tend to relax a little bit, and teams will catch you and you'll slip down. I think St. Louis is in a perfect position right now to put a run together to finish out, and get up to the trade deadline, maybe make a couple of minor moves. But I like this team. There's players all across this team that I really enjoy playing games with, KQ31 being one of them. So there's a lot of good players on this team, and I think Barris has done an outstanding job.
For sure. And people wondered how that trading Busy and Braden and Balaki and that whole deal that he made last week was going to affect this team. They lost their first 3 games of the week, playing against the Stars, the Blackhawks, and the Jets. But then they went 5 out of 6 to end the week, ending the week on a 4-game win streak. They beat the Predators 2-0. Then they lost to the Canucks 4-1. And then they beat the Avalanche, Sharks, LA, and Minnesota to end the week. And, if we're being completely honest here, to go 5-4 in a week where you face your division, which happens to be proven over 3 seasons, like we said, to be the toughest division in the league, you've done pretty well for yourself. And I don't think he can be too disappointed with making that trade based on a lot of the information as to why he had to make it. So, good job by Barris. He's slowly won me over and become one of my favorite people in this entire league. Because of our GM now, Frost, I've spent a lot more times in parties with him recently and gotten to talk to him and play some games with him, get to play some Rainbow Six with him. And honestly, there's not really a funnier guy to be in a party with, and he's got a really good outlook as an owner in this league. He knows what he's doing, and he knows exactly what he needs on this team. You may not get 3 CC Pipers to play center for you and 3 Class Acts to play left wing, but in a division where you're facing Class Act, Piper, and those guys on different teams all season long, and to be sitting there in a current playoff position right now, and things only starting to look better for your team, I think he's done an outstanding job. So, the Blues are going to be there. They don't go away. They've proven that, and I think this season will be another story just like that. They'll be battling here at the top of their division. They're only 2 points away from tying the Blackhawks for the division lead, 1 point behind the Wild for second place. So they're not going away. They just need to get the goals for total up just a little bit. Is they're 19 to the negative on their goal differential, but so far hasn't affected them as they are currently sitting in a playoff spot. So let's move on to that team that's 1 point ahead of them in the standings, and that is the Minnesota Wild, sitting at 32 points. End of the week on a 2-game losing streak. They're 10-4-1 when hosting, and then they're 5-6-1 away. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10 games, 7-4-2 in 1-goal games, and they are 15-10-2 on the season. I think the Minnesota Wild are a team run by a new owner in Agger that I have made tons of deals since the start of the season. They've brought in some good players. They have guys like Jay Cool, Dino Mike. They made a trade with Tampa last week in I believe a 2-for-1 deal to bring in Crazy Lish. They brought in Barris's old owner, Raya the Beholder, to be GM this season, just to show you what kind of cluster what the Central is. And then a guy that they just made a deal for in Jedi 420, who's never been looked at as a superstar in this league, but is quietly season over season put up really good numbers and won a lot of games.
Minnesota is definitely an interesting team. They've made quite a few moves here, but this is a team I think that, you always see the bulk of this roster on playing games together, which I think is a huge key to success in this league. You got to be familiar with your teammates. Yeah, you have to know what each other is doing out on the ice if you're going to go and win games in the league. And this is definitely a team that you see playing games nonstop. There's always a group of them on. They're always playing games, and I think that's shown. It's come through in their 15-10-2 record. They're sitting in second in the Central, believe it or not. And
have the most wins in the division as well.
Right. So, this is a team where, the old adage, practice makes perfect, couldn't be more true. You look across this lineup, and there's a lot of guys on here some that are new to the NHL this season. But there's a lot of guys having good seasons for this team. And one guy that I'd like to point out that's kind of just taken the league by storm and blown people away, and that's two-way hockey. He's made the switch from center over to right wing. It seems to obviously suit him extremely well. Playing on the wing rather than playing up the middle, and take away a little bit of that defensive responsibility from somebody, and all of a sudden, boom, they take off and they start putting points up in bunches. And when I say points up in bunches, I mean 35 points in 9 games in the NHL. That's an outstanding job.
It's
and
this team 4 points a game.
Yeah, I mean, this team's definitely got the talent to get it done here for a little, and see. We'll see if it remains to be seen on whether or not they can hold this. This is a tough division. There's going to be teams gunning for them, and coming up and coming after them. So it'll be interesting to see if the Wild can stay where they're at and maintain, because they've got teams like St. Louis. They have teams like the Predators, Avalanche, Stars, and the Jets, all that want that spot that they are currently sitting in. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can hold their ground and continue to pick up wins. But looking at a guy like Dom's squad, he's 9-0, hasn't lost yet. So this team's definitely got some talent across. So it'll be interesting to see if they can maintain, but I like what I see so far. And Jedi, isn't that is he now back? I thought he is back.
He's always been around. What are you talking
about?
They just made a trade with Montreal to bring him in.
Right, but they traded him to Montreal just 5 days ago.
Gotcha. I didn't know what you meant.
But I guess he is back on the Minnesota Wild. So he's having a really good season for them. He's putting up some points as always, as per usual for Jedi. So we'll see if this team can maintain. Kresser has come up and he's done a really good job for this team. Being a free agent that they picked up in bidding this season. Bidu always has, a very solid season. And now that they've got Danny K 2399, I'm sure he's playing with Bidu as their old club mates from a while back. So, this team's definitely a product of their play outside of league, and I will promise you that this is definitely a team that plays a lot outside of league play, and it definitely shows with their record.
Yeah, the only thing you really have to worry about is, as a new owner, is he going to be able to maintain in this division what he's done to this point? Because you've seen with new owners in the past, some guys will have a great roster put together and then make one or two too many moves and pull it apart, and the whole thing falls apart and you fall down the standings. If they can avoid doing that, they're in a great position right now to stick in this division and be a force the rest of the way. So we'll see what Agger's able to continue to do with this team, and basically have an eye on them to see what happens, because in this division, as you saw the Jets go from first place to last place in 1 week, it can happen overnight basically with these teams. So as good of a start as you've had to the season, you can't take any days off in this division, or they'll pull away from you in the blink of an eye. You have to basically go 6-3, 7-2, 7-1-1, 8-1. You have to do things like that in this division on a weekly basis just to maintain where you're at, much less to gain ground. So, congratulations to Minnesota to this point, and we will see if they're able to keep it up. Now let's move on to that first place in the team in the division, the Chicago Blackhawks. Your Stanley Cup champions from season 3. Last season had ownership change about the halfway point. Piper took over the team, returns as owner this season, makes some changes to the roster. One that surprised me was when Klasak took GM of Dallas. He was a guy that I thought for sure wasn't going to leave Piper's side. He did. And, it doesn't seem that it's hurt Piper as much in the sense of standings, as they're sitting at first in this division. They still have Kearns, who's 11-4-2. He's your defending Vezina Trophy winner. 11-4-2 on the season, picked up 2 shutouts this week. They made a big deal to bring in Rick Chow, 98, to play left wing with them. They brought Extendo back, who has been their third line center for now. This is his second season with them. He's 3-3-3, picking up 19 points, 12 goals, 7 assists. He's the model of consistency and a very good defensive center. They just made a trade to pick up Brothers to play with, I believe, Zamuth. They have Geno Snipe, who they brought in on a, I think, $6.25 million contract. They brought back Serpy, who's 7-0-2 on the season with 34 points. He's right up there near the league leading points. This team is deep from top to bottom. They still have Deji on Deji 99 on defense. He's 6-2-1. And then, of course, Darius Canuck, FTC. He's 5-3-1 with 10 points on the season. Then, of course, they brought in Primetime, who was the GM of Barris' St. Louis Blues last season, moving to Chicago. He's 5-2-2 on the season with 13 points. Piper's 5-4 on the season. Interesting to see that record, 5-4. He doesn't generally lose 4 games in a full season. But, chances are he'll end up finishing the season with those 4 losses and 23 wins, or whatever the total would be to 24 wins. He does have 27 points on the season, 9 goals, 18 assists for your reigning Selke Trophy winner. So, this team is tough to play on a nightly basis. And, they're right back where they expect to be at the top of this division. Not with a comfortable lead by any means, but they are sitting up there in first place, and probably a couple of wins that they'd want back, but sitting in first place, they can't be too disappointed with how the season has started.
Oh, that's definitely true. I mean, and let's not forget, this is a team that came out in first week and they, stumbled a little bit in Chicago terms. This is a team that's definitely stacked from top to bottom. They've got some great players this season. And I think the thing that may set them apart from their team that they've had in the past, or at least last season, is that I think their third line can get it done this season. I think the guys playing on those, that bottom third line for Chicago, I think can straight play the game. So, when you take that and you add it to their already extremely strong top 2 lines, you have a team that's going to be sitting in first in the Central, and that is the Chicago Blackhawks. This team's definitely got some solid, if not superstar players on it. Serpy off to another great start this season for them. Zamuth has come up, had himself a solid season. Gino has done nothing but, just continue to rise as a player in this league. You got a guy like Kearns between the pipes for you. You're always going to have a shot no matter who's playing out front. So this team's definitely, there to put a run together this season. I definitely know, you got to think that they're staring straight at that cup, and it's not a doubt in their mind, and it shouldn't be. This team's definitely got the talent to do it. Now you add someone like Primetime into the mix to this team, and that gives you, a leader on the back end and an outstanding defender to go along with the reigning Selke winner and CC Piper. So, this team's definitely got what it takes to get it done. We'll see if they can kind of hold this spot. I have a feeling that, the first spot in this division is going to change hands probably 15, 20 more times this season. As some of these teams will just continue to come up, go down, up, down, up, down, up, down, but Chicago will always be right there in the top 4.
Yeah. And, basically the way this division has held true is that if you watch games on Sunday and then go look at the standings after all the stats have been put in, and then you go to sleep, you wake up Monday. If you don't pay attention to what happens Monday and you're talking to somebody on Tuesday and you're like, well, yeah, they're in first place in the division. By then they may be in fourth place in the division. You have no idea how the division is going to look on a nightly basis. Which is why it's so important to win your 2 games each night and now 3 games on Tuesdays, especially when you're part of the Western Central. it's interesting when you go look at some of these teams. I know Columbus is sitting at 48 points. Out of the gates, extremely hot, highest point total in the league by far. But Chicago has won the President's Trophy twice on the PlayStation side. They won it season 1 and they won it season 3. If things hold true for Chicago, they win it in odd seasons. It'll be a season where I think, they've got a chance to get off the ground here and get better. They're probably a little bit disappointed with some things that have happened, but they really shouldn't be. But this is a team that if they catch fire, a guy like Piper who has 4 losses on the season in 9 games, don't expect that to last for 9 straight weeks. That happened for 3 weeks, and then the next 6 weeks he may go 18-0. So, I mean, I'm not one to sit here and speculate too much, but Chicago has been so consistent with being good season over season that this is one team that I can expect to be fighting not just for a division win, or this team doesn't just fight to make the playoffs. Every season they expect to bring home the Stanley Cup, and if they don't, it's a disappointing season for them. So expect them to make the right moves, get themselves better here, and try their best to extend their lead in this Central Division. And when it comes to playoff time, they will be right there ready to go and probably sitting there with home ice advantage as they so often do.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. This is a team that's not going anywhere as far as down in the standings. Look for them to be there when the smoke settles. Yep.
So that'll do it for our division spotlight this week. We covered the Western Central Division. It's always a fun division to cover, and I think if you revisit this division at any point during the season, that there's definitely always a new story to tell, and there's usually a team in there that some people may call a weaker team, or a team that doesn't fit, or whatever you want to say. Doesn't matter. Their worst case scenario, single digit points separate the 7 teams in this division, but generally they're like 5-6 points between each other from 1st to 7th place, and 1 or 2 nights of hockey can drastically change the look of this division setup. So the Western Central is always fun to cover, and I expect them to be an interesting story the rest of the way. So let's go ahead as we move into our second hour of the show. Let's move on to this week's LG Hockey Hotline Power Rankings. And this week, again, we are talking about goalies first. I think that the goalie list has changed quite a bit week over week, and I will say that this week there will be a new first star, is the one and only who was, I believe, 11-1 after 2 weeks. Yes, he was. Didn't even make the top 10 this week, so there will be a new first star for goalie for week 3 of LG this season. Starting at the number 10 spot, you got Kobe Ripple for Boston going 1-1 with a 4 goals against average and a 73.3 save percentage and 1 shutout. In the number 9 spot, you got Flyers app for the Carolina Hurricanes going 2-1 on the week with a 1.9 goals against and an 85 save percentage. In the number 8 spot, a guy that we just talked about sort of at length, Croft 040 for those St. Louis Blues, 3-3 on the week, but 2 of those 3 wins were shutouts for him. He did tell me a funny story about one of the games that they lost where I think they got outshot like 26-4 and lost by 1 goal or something. I can't remember the whole story, but he wanted me to mention that a little bit. Made 63 saves on the week, facing over 10 shots a game. In the number 7 spot, you got T40, who was 3-0-1 on the week for the Edmonton Oilers, picking up a 2.16 goals against and an 83 save percentage. In the number 6 spot, our boy Dirty South going 5-1 on the week, picking up 49 saves, 2.77 goals against, a 74.2 save percentage, and a clutch leaving family dinner early to help us out in net on Wednesday. In the number 5 spot for the New York Rangers, we have the league's third star of the week, Pages Rad, going 3-0 with a 1.62 goals against average and an 84.4 save percentage. In the number 4 spot is Schneider 24 for the St. Louis Blues, going 2-0, picking up a 1.87 goals against average, an 84.6 save percentage, and 1 shutout. In the number 3 spot, picking up the league's second star, is Kearns, going 5-1 with 2 shutouts, a 1.5 goals against, and a 79.1 save percentage. Just another day at the office for Kearnsy. In the number 2 spot with the league's first star is Chapman, the draft pick for those Columbus Blue Jackets. Following up after we talked about the current award ranking last week, he was in second for the Vezina race. I have to think after going 6-0 this week with the one and only not making the list that he's probably right now in first place in that conversation. 6-0 on the week, a 1.34 goals against average, an 87.9 save percentage, and picking up 2 shutouts. Getting the league's first star there. And then in the number 1 spot, Sparkplug Nick, picking up a 2-0 record with a 0.5 goals against and a 94.1 save percentage with 1 shutout. Fantastic numbers for Sparkplug out of Toronto this week. But for me, the number 1 star, unless there's multiple goalies going 6-0 in a week, the 6-0 goalie in a week will almost always get it from me. Picking up 2 shutouts, the 1.34 goals against, which is less than 1.5 goals a game in 6 games in a week. Almost a 90 save percentage is Chapman for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Congratulations, Chapman. Way to go out there and get it done 6 times this week. Let's go ahead and move on to this week's defenseman.
Yeah, it's a great job by Chapman. This week we're going to start at the bottom here at number 20 with Downey, who went 1-0-1 on the week. But the reason he's here is because he had 6 points.
3 points a game as a defenseman.
Yeah.
Is he playing forward or something in those games?
In the number 19 spot, we have Foote for the New Jersey Devils, who I'd just like to point out is 9-0 on the season so far, with 11 points, 3 goals, 8 assists. He's a plus 18, but he has taken 5 penalties. No, Foote having an outstanding season. He was a plus 9 this week, and how he's so far down on this list is beyond me because he had an outstanding week. At the 18th spot is Matt Perreault for the Edmonton Oilers, who's 3-0 this week, picking up a goal. And a plus 1. And the 17th spot is the Sophist 10 for the Ottawa Senators, going 3-0 with 3 points, picking up a goal and a plus 7. In the number 16 spot is the owner of the Florida Panthers and Lazy Pedestrian, going 3-0 on the week with 4 points and a plus 5. In the number 15 spot is Mantha for those same Florida Panthers, going 3-0 with 4 points and a plus 5. In the number 14th spot is Entry 2, going 3-0 on the week for those Columbus Blue Jackets, picking up 4 points, one of which was a goal, a plus 4 on the week. And in the number 13 spot is the GM of the Detroit Red Wings, old friend of ours, Beavesy, who went 3-0 on the week with a point, but he was a big plus 11 on the week.
He probably won't appreciate you saying he's old.
With the Detroit Red Wings. In the number 12 spot is Ryan Was Here 78. Went 3-0 on the week, picked up 5 points, was a plus 3. In the 10 spot is Meka Diva Meka. Meka Diva Meka. Oh, it's Paris. All right. 3-0 on the week with 3 points. and a
Harris and his
+4.
damn name changes.
Yeah. Rounding out the top 10 is Bo Dangles for those same St. Louis Blues, going 3-0 on the week, picking up a couple of points and a +5. In the number 9 spot is Viper for the Los Angeles Kings, going 2-0, picking up 3 points and a +2. In the number 8 spot is Full Throttle for the Ottawa Senators, going 3-0, picking up 5 points and +11 on the week. In the number 7 spot is King Clutch, who has made the switch back to defense this season, and he went 3-0 this week, and he seems to be on this list every single week so far this season. He had 4 points, one of which was a goal, and a +10 on the week. In the number 6 spot, and this one's hard for me to believe that he's down this far, going 3-0 on the week, is Trio Big Mac for the New Jersey Devils. He had 8 points, 2 goals, and a +9 on the week, averaging 2.7 points per game.
Yep.
And the number 5 spot is Angry Dangler, who is Ryan was here's D partner over with the New York Rangers, going 3-0 this week, picking up 5 points, one of which was a goal, and a +6 on the week. And the number 4 spot is Desi 99 for the Chicago Blackhawks, going 3-0 on the week, picking up 3 points, 1 goal, and a +9. And rounding out the top 3 is D Perrins for the Dallas Stars, going 2-0 on the week, picking up 5 points in those 2 games, one of which was a goal, a +4, coming in at 2.5 points per game there. In the number 2 spot is Jay Silvers for those Detroit Red Wings, going 3-0 on the week, picking up 6 points, 4 goals, and a +4. And in the top spot is Prime Time, going 3-0 on the week with 5 points, 1 goal, and a +7. This one's going to be a tough decision for me without having their full numbers right in front of me. I wish they'd kind of add takeaways and giveaways to these stats. I guess I could click on them and do a little bit of research here, but time just isn't suffice for that. So this week, I'm going to go with Jay Silvers as my number 1 star for defenseman because he put up 4 goals, which is something that's fairly tough to do for on the back end. As you'll notice, a lot of these guys don't even have a goal, and if they do, the 2 is the max that the rest of them have, and he was able to pick up 4 goals this week for the Detroit Red Wings, and my star goes to Jay Silvers.
Yeah, congratulations to Jay Silvers on the solid week there for Detroit. Moving on to forwards, we have Kraz 18 in the number 20 spot, picking up 13 points on the week, 4 goals, and a +6 for those Ottawa Senators. Miss you, Kraz. In the number 19 spot, you have Tendy going 3-0 for his 3rd straight week. He's undefeated on the season at 9-0, picking up 12 points, 8 goals, and a +9. In the 18 spot, you got Lake Cupidon. I don't know. 2-1. Sounds like some sort of dinosaur or something. The Lake Cupidon. Going 2-1 with 13 points, 8 goals, and a +9. In the number 17 spot, JLM going 3-0 with 10 points, 8 goals, and a +9. In the number 16 spot, Jay Felice, a guy that I've also played Rainbow Six with recently, a fair amount. Super funny guy. I like to play with him. He's always got something funny to say. Having a great week for those league leading, currently running away with the President's Trophy Columbus Blue Jackets. 3-0, 12 points, 5 goals. Was a draft pick this season, I think at the number 13 overall position, and I believe he is also 9-0 on the season. In the number 15 spot is Checkmate for the Nashville Predators, 2-1 on the week with 13 points, 7 goals, and a +6. In the number 14 spot, we got JD Hegel going 2-0 on the week, 8 points, 4 goals. That's 4 points a game, but where's your 3rd game, bro? In the 13th spot is Zamuth for the Chicago Blackhawks. They make a move to go pick him up. And week 2 with the Blackhawks, he goes 3-0, picks up 9 points, 5 goals, and a +14, which is up in the top 5 for plus-minus on the week. In the number 12 spot is a Detroit Red Wing with a couple X's and some capital and lowercase letters, going 2-0 on the week with 7 points, a +8, and 3 goals. That is Dufresne, I guess. In the number 11, do these names like get worse every season? In the 11 spot is extra LG, but it looks like extra lag to me. Going 3-0 for the Calgary Flames, picking up 11 points, 5 goals, and a +7. In the number 10 spot, you got Nick for the LA Kings, 2-0-1, 12 points, 7 goals, and he was even. In the 9 spot, Henny 16 for the Buffalo Sabres, 3-0, 12 points, 7 goals, and a +9. In the 8 spot for the Vancouver Canucks, Trope 23, 12.6 goals and a +4. In the number 7 spot, you got Serpy going 3-0 with 14 points, 4 goals, and a +14. In the number 6 spot for those Ottawa Senators, Alex Drum 100 going 3-0 with 18 points on the week, 9 goals, and a +11. In the number 5 spot, Big J Aote going 3-0 with 14 points, 11 goals, and +7, playing center and right wing. In the number 4 spot is Killer Santo, a guy who we haven't seen since season 2 in the AHL. He missed out on his entire draft contract. Didn't play the last 2 seasons. Going 2-0 on the week with 11 points, 4 goals, and a +14. In the 3rd spot, also getting the league's 3rd star, is Abba Zaba, going 3-0 with 16 points, 8 goals, and a +16. In the number 2 spot, Theos, first week with Detroit, going 3-0, 18 points, 9 goals, and a +15. And then in the number 1 spot, picking up the league's 1st star, is Sudsy 92, going 3-0 on the week, 19 points, 11 goals, and a +16. Sudsy will also get my 1st star of the week for forwards for LG Hockey Hotline, putting up almost 20 points in a week. Sudsy has been the model of consistency for Detroit. He was there all last season as well, and didn't have any losses or any wins turned over to losses when all that happened with Detroit last season. He has been the perfect model citizen, I should say, for the Detroit Red Wings, going out week over week, winning games left and right, putting up high point totals, playing center for that Detroit Red Wings team, and he's continued to do so this season. So congratulations to Sudsy 92 on picking up the 1st star this week. And congratulations to everybody else on this list, and Jay Silvers and Chapman for picking up the other 2 stars. And that will do it for this week's Power Rankings.
Yeah, that's a great job by everybody. You know, some new faces on the power rankings this week, some familiar faces on the power rankings this week. And I just want to throw a shout out. And he is on our team, but you know what? I got to throw a shout out to A1 Dirty South for having a 5-1 week. The guy's been rock solid for us. He's gone out and he's been put in some tough situations against some of the best teams in the league. And, he's just continued to come in and do his job. And not complain too much, but had himself a great week this week, and it's good to see.
Yeah, it is. I think as we start to look at these power rankings week over week, there's definitely nice to see some different faces on here every once in a while. A guy like Angry Dangler making it up into the 5 position on defense for the New York Rangers, and his defense partner, who I'm surprised you didn't call, Ryan Washer, making it to the number 12 spot. It might be the first time you've said his name and didn't say that. But congratulations to all, and we will talk about it again next week on next week's Power Rankings. If you weren't on there this week or you want to win the 1st star, go out and get it done in your 3 games, and we will see what happens next time we talk about it. I did not get an update this week for the awards race, so I will have to message about that and see if we can get that in for next week. Guys have busy schedules. That's why I didn't promise every week we'd do it if we could, but it takes a lot of time to input all those stats and keep up with it. So whenever they get that done and we have a list, we will bring it to you to update you all on the awards race for this season. So, Moran, anything else you want to cover?
No, I think I'm good for this week.
Awesome. Well, I think I am too. Congratulations to everybody that we talked about on power rankings. Good job to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who have gone from they've basically become this year's Calgary Flames, right? They went from worst place to now they're in first place through 3 weeks. We'll see if they can keep that up. Next week, we will obviously be talking about the Eastern Atlantic Division. It is the only division we have not talked about yet. So we will see you next Saturday, same time, same place. Have a good weekend.
Enjoy your weekend, everyone. We will see you next week.
Happy birthday, Moran.